There she is. So, Emily, we will turn it over to you to do the style of the month.
Sure. Which screen? Hey, screen share worked first time.
There you go.
Yay. Cool. Welcome to Style of the Month. Yeah, so very much like David, I got hooked on brown ales because of Last Brewer Standing. I got assigned American Brown, and at first I was like, gross. But it's a really interesting category. So what is a brown beer? I'm going to focus on brown for the historical part. Traditionally, it was just any beer that was brown in color. And when you think about it, that's pretty much everything. So what would happen with traditional kilning, some malts would come out green and some would come out really charred, but everything was kind of on average this brown color. So that was the brown ales. But there was also, so it included stouts and porters, but there was also other ways to make pale malted beers, so like their wheats and everything. So it was just the darker stuff. However, the drum roaster was then invented, and that allowed it finer control. So people started coming out with black malts, and so porters and stouts and pale ales became a thing. And then the brown ales kind of tanked because people were sick of them, I guess. I don't know. People gravitated towards the stouts and the porter and the pale ales. However, home brewers were the ones who revived the style in like the 80s. So without further ado, towards the American styles, first of all, California Common. California Common is a historical style. There's two historical styles here, and it's technically a lagered beer. It's also sometimes known as a steam beer. So it was fermented without temperature control, but because it was brewed in like the areas of the gold rush, so it's like San Francisco where temperature was cooler, they were able to regulate temperatures that way. And amber ale is sort of like a California Common. Amber ale is a purely American concept. It's become adopted to other areas, but the distinction between California Common and American Amber is that the California Common isn't as American-y as we know beers to be. That like hoppy punch. That's the distinction between the two styles there. And then Kentucky Common is another historical style. It was fast and it was cheap to make. So we're talking like 8 days grain to glass. So it stood out because it was so cheap to make. And it has a very distinctive mineral quality to it because it was distinctive to one particular area. And then American Brown Ale is kind of still, it's the rest of everything. It's a very broad style. Think of like red wine. There's a lot of stuff in there. So it has a lot of interpretations, but still to distinguish it from the English styles, it's much hoppier and much less malty. The English styles, by contrast, the English brown ales, you'll notice there is no amber ale because that's the American concept. London brown ales were very, very, very sweet. It's also historical style, and there was a historical one called Man's Brown Ale, which was marketed as being like the hoppiest or the sweetest beer in Europe, and it was pasteurized and then back sweetened. And these are all quite regional in style. So as you move north, things get a little bit less sweeter. So the dark ale is distinguished between the London Brown Ale and the British Brown Ale because it's got like a nice sweetness to it, like a dark fruit typically. And then the British Brown Ale, again, is more of like a catch-all category to the others. Oops, got the wrong browser window open, sorry. So locally available examples, the Nut Brown Ale, I wasn't unfortunately able to get that one. I'm drinking the Wellington Brown right now because it's up the street from me. Everything that's on this list should be generally available right now. Gravenhurst Steam is the only example that I could find of the California Common, and that is unfortunately not available in GTA from what I can find, but everything else should be available in the GTA. As David mentioned, next month, Strong Stouts and Ales. So if you would like to taste along with us, maybe just pick one of these beers. There are a couple recipes in the database, not to toot my own horn, but mine is one of them. It's pretty good. It's somewhere in between a black IPA and an American Stout. And then Eric's got his Bridal Brow. If you've ever had it, it's phenomenal. It's very imperial, but it's great. And that's all I have for Style of the Month.
There we go. Thanks, Emily. Let me do this. Where am I going here? There we are. I think that's working. Is that not working? I hope so. Oh, I see what's happening. Emily, you're sharing your screen still.
Oh, do I have to stop?
Yeah.
There we go.
There you are. That's okay.
I'd like to say I'm new, but no.
So, where am I going? Da, 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 da. And what happened to my, I was going to do this. Where am I going here? Here we are. That's better. I don't know if Emily's still spotlighted. I thought I turned her off as being spotlighted. Okay, good. So we have a few minutes. I think I have a recipe for a brown ale that I did last year that I want to brew again. So it's an American brown. It's I think it was called granola brown. It's one from the U.S. from the northeast side of the country, and if I remember correctly, a buddy of mine had his wife signed him up for a beer advent calendar, right? And this was 2020, right? And he signed up for a beer advent calendar, and he does not like dark beers. So he brought over all the porters and dark ales and stuff like that to me to have. And I was like, oh, okay, I can deal with this. And this one brown ale was actually really tasty. And I looked it up online. I looked up was able to find a reasonable clone recipe, and I tried it, and I said, "Oh, this is good. I'm going to do this again." So it has oats in it because it's a quote unquote granola brown ale, right? So I think I can't remember who did it. I'll have to look it up. It's been more than a year since I brewed it, but I want to brew it again because I haven't had it in a while. So anyway, Rain, you had a question.
Well, yeah, actually, it was two-part. Now that you just mentioned it, you kind of answered part of it. I noticed interestingly that on your chart there, comparing English in London and mild, the mild actually kind of nudges up on the ABV over the others, which is kind of funny. I know that when I was trying to brew some milds, mouthfeel and body was a big issue. So I was dumping some oats in there and getting some good results in my experimentation. But I'm wondering if it's actually very conventional to whether in a mild or in brown ales to use oats for that purpose. If anybody has ideas on that.
I don't think it's traditional, but I always do it because it's such an issue.
Yeah, it does help. It's nice. I just didn't know if it was by the rules, so to speak.
I don't think I've ever had a London brown ale. There's one historical example, but I can't find a damn thing that's made modern. I'd love to try it. It sounds really interesting.
When I've had it like in presence in the UK, it was a very long time ago. And other than maybe being a bit drier, I would say the black oak is actually a pretty good, like, and this is all by memory, not by notes. It's not far off. It's just simply drier. It's got all the rest of the body and nuttiness. It just doesn't have that treacle taste to it.
There we go. Yeah, the dark mild. I've brewed a dark mild, and it's I've found that you mashing super high and short seems to work, right? Mind you, that then you have to accommodate for that if you want it to be, 3.5%. Mine usually come in around just over 3, right? Which is okay, right? But I've only brewed it a handful of times, and I usually don't put it on tap. I usually brew it and able to put it into a pin or a cask, and it usually gets finished off pretty quickly.
That choosing your yeast makes a big difference for those as well. You need something that doesn't attenuate as much, and then you can really have that nice residual sweetness, and that helps. You're basically doing everything you can to try to get any little bit extra body in there.